Governments are actively trying to turn your smartphone and also your computer into an authoritarian digital bouncer, but their massive plan kinda backfired because they accidentally triggered a full blown, pretty much software mutiny. Like, just imagine booting up a brand new device, and before you can even see your home screen, well, just the entire operating system just locks you out and demands a picture of your physical driver's license. Like, that is the literal reality behind sweeping new mandates like California's Digital Age Assurance Act and also the Federal Parents Decide Act, which are trying to force age verification checks directly into the core code of Windows, Mac OS, Android, and more. Like, it sounds like an inescapable privacy nightmare. Instead of just rolling over, the open source community basically launched a scorched-earth campaign against the state. Developers are flat out refusing to build the surveillance tools, pretty much engineering specialized software explicitly designed to destroy the checkpoints, and they are already forcing panicked politicians into an embarrassing retreat. Like, this isn't just about protecting one specific application or one country's kids from the internet. Like, this is a full-blown war over who actually controls the fundamental software you run on the hardware that you own. And the sheer uncompromising defiance from the open source community is honestly one of the most brilliant and satisfying things to watch unfold in real time. The absolute frontline of this entire software rebellion started making massive headlines recently with GrapheneOS, which is basically a highly respected, privacy-focused, open source version of Android that completely strips out all the invasive Google tracking. Recently, a GrapheneOS user was just trying to complete a standard PlayStation age verification check through a massive digital ID vendor called Yoti, and the customer service agent literally told the user that their account had been flagged and automatically reported to the police simply because they were running Graphene OS. Like, imagine just trying to play a video game and being told that you are getting reported to the police just because you care about your phone's privacy. And now the moderators over at GrapheneOS, they quickly stepped in to calm everyone down on the forum, just publicly calling the threat completely fear-mongering, and also pointing out that a rogue support agent was just almost power tripping and making ridiculous claims to just scare the user. And for what it's worth, well, Yoti itself actually did came out and claimed that the screenshot didn't match anything in their records and that they'd never report anyone over their choice of operating system, which honestly just makes you wonder how a so-called rogue agent had that kind of script ready to fire off in the first place. But even though the police threat was almost certainly a total bluff, this massive PR disaster just proves something genuinely terrifying to the entire internet. The underlying detection infrastructure being built around these whole age verification systems is incredibly real, highly invasive, and is already actively fingerprinting devices to see exactly what software you are running. In response to this creeping surveillance, GrapheneOS drew a massive line in the sand, making it completely clear that they have absolutely zero intention of ever adding age verification to their operating system, just flat out refusing to collect user IDs, personal information, or require mandatory accounts, period. Making it clear they intend to stay available worldwide instead of just backing down. It was a massive, highly public middle finger, pretty much, to the lawmakers attempting to turn open phones into closed tracking devices, and pretty brilliant while I'm at it. But the defiance didn't just stop with mobile phones, because the rebellion, well, it quickly escalated into developers actively building digital countermeasures, which is exactly where we get the absolute genius of a project called Ageless Linux. So Ageless Linux was created by a developer named John McArdle and officially launched in March of this year as a direct, highly functional act of political protest against these draconian age verification laws. Instead of just writing an angry blog post just complaining about government overreach, well, they actually built a modified version of the Debian operating system that is just completely dedicated to neutralizing any attempt to verify a user's age. Their mission statement is just incredibly bold and honestly just hilarious. They actively track how mainstream Linux distributions are responding to these incoming legal mandates, and if any distribution just dares to forward and add a prompt for the Ageless Linux project, just immediately publishes a script that literally rips it right out of the code. They even added files to the system explicitly broadcasting their non-compliance to the world, proudly declaring themselves in full knowing and also intentional non-compliance, and flagging their status as just flagrantly non-compliant. It's actually so funny. The absolute beauty of this Ageless Linux is just that it perfectly exposes the fundamental ignorance of the politicians writing these laws. They genuinely thought that they could just mandate a digital checkpoint on every single computer, and just completely failing to understand that when software is open source and decentralized, developers can just absolutely will surgically remove the surveillance code the second it gets installed. This massive wave of technical resistance quickly pulled the larger, more like mainstream open source companies into the fight, heavily pressuring politicians to actually explain how this surveillance could actually possibly even work on decentralized software. Like System 76, the popular company that makes Linux computers and develops the Pop! OS operating system, I actually use it on my other computer. Well, they got directly involved and completely dismantled the government's logic behind these invasive mandates. Their CEO basically had to sit these out-of-touch representatives down and explain that open source values are just fundamentally different from the corporate consumption model driving iOS and Android. The argument was that open source software isn't built to collect personal information, profile kids, inject targeted ads, or hook people with addictive design patterns. Meaning that forcing mandatory age verification onto systems, it just creates a massive unnecessary privacy cost without really adding any actual safety benefit. They made it clear that personal privacy is central to the entire open source philosophy, and if any open source project actually tries to force users to verify their age, the software will just get abandoned, or developers will just simply fork the code and strip the tracking out entirely. The sheer logistical nightmare of trying to police a global community of volunteer developers, hobbyists, and just like tech nerds makes it undeniably clear to lawmakers that you simply cannot force an open ecosystem to act as like an authoritarian agent for like states and nations. And the absolute best part about this entire situation is that the software rebellion actually got results, landing an incredibly rare and genuinely satisfying win for digital privacy. Like, because developers straight up just refused to comply and prove that they could literally just script away the surveillance tools, lawmakers were forced to start carving them out of the legislation. Like, for example, in Colorado, after a massive collaborative effort between like local developers and representatives, well, the state locked an exemption into its age verification bill that explicitly excludes things like open source software. And California, normally the absolute worst offender when it comes to draconian tech laws, got hit with so much backlash from the open source community that the very same lawmaker who wrote the original act introduced a follow-up amendment that pretty much excluded open source operating systems from the 2027 requirements. And as of right now, that carve-out is still working its way through like the legislature, so it's looking strong but not fully locked in just yet. But if it lands the same way that Colorado's did, well, mainstream Linux, well, it's gonna walk away completely clean. And here is like the important part. Like, age verification did not just get like completely wiped out just yet. Like, that did not happen. But what actually happens is that the open source world has carved itself like a lifeboat. Like, the mandates themselves are still very much like, alive. Like, the big tech companies are still on the hook to start like checking your age. And also the federal bill, it's still in Congress, so it's not exactly like a 100% clean victory, because I think the big tech giants are still going to probably fold. But for open source, at least, it's going to be a lot harder to try and get this age verification stuff onto there. Like, it's just fundamentally different from the architecture of like the closed source stuff that just does all the tracking and stuff. But yeah, that's it for this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.